8 months I hid his child in the poverty of the Bronx, but the mobster found us right in the delivery room. The realization hit Nia Washington with more force than the contraction currently tearing through her abdomen. She gripped the metal railing of the hospital bed, her knuckles turning white, her breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps. The room in the underfunded clinic smelled of antiseptic and stale floor wax, a stark contrast to the sterile, expensive scent of cedar and rain that used to cling to her sheets. "Nia, listen to me, Dr. Martinez said, her voice urgent, cutting through the haze of pain. The monitor beside the bed was beeping with a frantic, irregular rhythm that mirrored the panic rising in Nia's chest. "The baby's heart rate is dropping. The cord is wrapped. We need to do an emergency C-section, but we do not have the specialized anesthetist on site for a high-risk case like this. We need to transfer you, but we do not have time." Nia looked up, sweat matting her natural hair to her forehead. "High risk? You said everything was fine." "The distress is sudden," the doctor snapped, shedding her bedside manner for brutal honesty. "If we do not get this baby out in 20 minutes, you looking at severe hypoxia. Brain damage. Or worse." The world tilted on its axis. For 8 months, Nia had lived in a studio apartment the size of a closet. She had worked double shifts on swollen feet, eating ramen and dodging the shadows of her past, all for this baby. She had walked away from a penthouse overlooking Central Park, from a closet full of designer silk, and from the only man she had ever loved because his world was painted in blood and hers was meant to be safe. She had left Han Kyung-soo because she refused to let her child be a pawn in a mafia war. She had left because of the arranged marriage he had hidden from her, the woman named Ji-won who had stood in his office claiming ownership. Nia had chosen poverty over being a mistress in a gilded cage. "Transfer me," Nia gasped. "Call an ambulance. Traffic is gridlocked on the bridge." "They would not make it," Dr. Martinez said, checking the monitor again. The beeping slowed. A terrifying, lethargic sound. "Nia, is there anyone? Anyone with resources? We need a private transport or a specialist who can get here now. You listed no father on the intake forms." Nia closed her eyes. The face that swam in the darkness behind her lids was sharp, devastatingly beautiful, and cold as the Han River in winter. Han Kyung-soo. If she called him, he would come. She knew that with a terrifying certainty. But if she called him, her freedom was over. He would see the deception. He would see that she had stolen his heir, hidden his flesh and blood in a neighborhood he would not even drive through without an armored convoy. In his world, betrayal was met with execution. For her, it would be a different kind of punishment. He would take the baby. He would banish Nia and keep the child in his fortress of glass and steel. She would save her daughter's life only to lose her to the monster she had run from. Ms. Washington. The nurse shouted as the monitor let out a long, warning whine. Nia's hand moved before her brain could stop it. She grabbed her phone from the bedside table, her fingers trembling so violently she almost dropped it. She unlocked the screen and pulled up the blocked contacts list. His number was there. The only number that mattered. Pride or life? The question burned in her throat. Your freedom or her breath? It was not a choice. It never was. She pressed the call button. It did not even ring twice. Nia. The voice was a physical blow. It was deep, textured with smoke and exhaustion, vibrating through the speaker and straight into her marrow. It had been 8 months of silence, 8 months of ignoring his emails, his desperate voicemails, his threats to burn the city down to find her. Help, she whispered, the pain of another contraction doubling her over. The clinic on 148th. The baby, she's dying. They see not. I have your location, he interrupted. The cold authority in his voice was instant, a switch flipped from shock to command. Track the signal, he barked at someone in the background. Then, his voice dropped, intimate and terrifying. Do not you dare close your eyes, Nia. I am coming. Kyung-soo, please, she sobbed, the fear of him and the need for him warring in her chest. She's in distress. She. The word hung in the air, heavy and loaded. A daughter. Yes. Silence stretched for a heartbeat, thick with betrayal and wonder. I'm 3 minutes away. Keep her alive, Nia. If you let my daughter die, I will tear this world apart. The line went dead. Nia let the phone fall onto the sheets. She had done it. She had summoned the devil to save an angel, and she knew, as the darkness crept into the edges of her vision, that the price for this miracle would be her soul. The clinic doors did not just open, they were thrown wide by a force of nature. Nia was drifting in and out of consciousness, the pain becoming a white noise that drowned out Dr. Martinez's frantic commands. But she heard the change in the atmosphere. The chaotic noise of the hallway suddenly died, replaced by the heavy, rhythmic thud of expensive leather shoes on cheap linoleum. Where is she? The voice boomed, bouncing off the peeling walls. It was not a question, it was an execution order waiting to be signed. Nia turned her head heavily against the pillow. Han Kyong-soo stood in the doorway of the labor room. He looked nothing like the polished, immaculate CEO she had left. His charcoal suit jacket was wrinkled, his tie was gone, and the top buttons of his shirt were torn open, revealing the edge of the dragon tattoo on his chest. His hair, usually styled to perfection, was wild, as if he had been running his fingers through it for hours. But his eyes, those obsidian eyes that had once looked at her with adoration, were now burning with a mixture of terror and a rage so profound it sucked the oxygen out of the room. Behind him stood 3 men. Security. They carried duffel bags and radiated a menace that made the nurses back away against the wall. Sir, you see a not be in here, Dr. Martinez started, though her voice wavered. I bought this building 2 minutes ago, Han snarled, not looking at her. His gaze was locked on Nia. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, devouring the distance between them. Get out of my way. He reached the bedside, and for a second, Nia flinched, expecting him to strike her, to grab her, to scream about the 8 months of lies. Instead, he gripped the bed rail, his knuckles white, staring down at her sweat-slicked face as if checking for cracks in a porcelain doll. The baby, Nia whispered, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. Kyong-soo, the cord. Han turned to the doctor. My medical team is landing on the roof of the hospital across the street. You have 60 seconds to brief them over the comms. He motioned to one of his men, who immediately handed a headset to the stunned doctor. Fix this. Now. We need to operate here, Dr. Martinez said, emboldened by the sheer force of his will. If we move her, we lose the baby. I need an anesthesiologist. He's here, Han said, gesturing to the hallway where a man in scrubs was already running in, followed by 2 nurses carrying equipment that looked far too expensive for this zip code. I brought my own. The room transformed. The chaotic, underfunded clinic became a command center. Han's men secured the door. His doctors took over the monitors. Nia felt a mask being placed over her face, the sweet chemical smell of anesthesia flooding her senses. But Han did not leave. He grabbed her hand. His grip was bruising, painful, possessive. Look at me, he commanded, his voice rough, cracking around the edges. Nia forced her eyes open. He was leaning over her, close enough that she could smell the stale whiskey on his breath and the metallic tang of fear. You ran, he hissed, the words dripping with hurt. You carried my child for 8 months in a place where rats chew through the wiring, and you did not tell me. I had to, she slurred, the drugs pulling her under. To save her. From me. The laugh that escaped him was devoid of humor. You thought you were saving her from me? From your world, she whispered. From the war. From her. Han's expression fractured. For a second, the mask of the ruthless crime lord slipped, revealing a man in agony. He squeezed her hand tighter, anchoring her to the earth. There is no world without you, he said, his voice low and fierce. And there is no war I would not stop for you. But you did not give me the chance. Fetal heart rate stabilizing, but we need to cut, the surgeon announced. Do it, Han ordered, never breaking eye contact with Nia. If anything happens to either of them, no one leaves this room alive. Nia wanted to argue, to tell him he could not threaten doctors, but the darkness was swallowing her whole. The last thing she felt was his hand, hot and trembling, holding onto her as if she were the only solid thing in a disintegrating universe. He's going to take her, she thought, panic flaring one last time before the blackness took her. He's going to take my baby and punish me for the rest of my life. When she woke, the pain was a dull throb, distant and muted. The room was quiet. Too quiet. The frantic beeping was gone, replaced by the soft hum of machinery. Nia's eyes flew open. Panic surged instantly. She sat up, gasping as her incision pulled, ignoring the agony. Easy. The voice came from the shadows in the corner. Nia turned. Han was sitting in a plastic chair that looked too small for his broad frame. He was still in his ruined shirt, his elbows resting on his knees. In his arms, swaddled in a pink hospital blanket, was a tiny bundle. He was looking down at the baby with an expression Nia had never seen on him. It was not the predator's gaze. It was not the cold calculation of a businessman. It was pure, unadulterated awe. He traced the curve of the baby's cheek with a finger that had pulled triggers and signed death warrants. She has your nose, he said quietly, not looking up. But she has my eyes. Poor girl. She LLC too much. Give her to me, Nia said, her voice hoarse. She held out her arms, terrified he would refuse. Terrified he would stand up and walk out the door, taking her heart with him. Han looked at her then. His eyes were red-rimmed. He looked exhausted, aged 10 years in 10 hours. Slowly, he stood up. He walked to the bed, moving with a reverence that made Nia's breath catch. He leaned down and placed the bundle gently into her arms. I named her Arya, Nia whispered, clutching the baby to her chest, smelling the newborn scent of milk and skin. Like we talked about. Before everything. Arya, Han tested the name. It sounded like a prayer on his lips. He did not pull away. He stood over the bed, his hand resting on the railing, trapping her. She is perfect, Nia. She is the only clean thing I have ever touched. Then his face hardened. The tenderness evaporated, replaced by the cold steel of the man she feared. And you almost killed her. Nia flinched. I did what I had to do. You lived in squalor, he spat, gesturing around the room. You worked double shifts while pregnant. You risked preeclampsia, malnutrition, stress. You denied my daughter her birthright. You denied me my fatherhood. Why? Because you think I am a monster. Because of Ji-won. Nia shouted back, the anger finally breaking through her fear. Because I came home and found you with another woman. A woman who told me she was your fiancée. A woman whose father demanded a merger. I was not going to let my daughter be the bastard child of a mistress while you played happy family with a mafia princess. Silence crashed into the room. Han stared at her, his mouth slightly open. The anger in his eyes shifted, replaced by a confusion that quickly morphed into a devastating realization. Ji-won, he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. You left, because of the arranged marriage? I left because you did not tell me about it, Nia cried, tears streaming down her face. Because you kept secrets. And in your world, secrets get people killed. Han closed his eyes. He let out a breath that sounded like a structure collapsing. He sank onto the edge of the mattress, his head bowing into his hands. The great Han Kyong-soo, the king of New York, looked utterly defeated. Nia, he said into his palms. Ji-won was gone 3 days after you left. The words hung in the air, suspended in the antiseptic silence. Nia stopped rocking Arya. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. What? She breathed. Han lifted his head. The exhaustion in his face was etched deep, carved by months of sleepless nights. 3 days. That's how long it took me to dismantle her father's leverage. I did not marry her. I destroyed her family's business. I bought their debt, cut their supply lines, and forced them out of the city. I started a war, Nia. A war I did not want, but a war I fought for us. Nia stared at him, her mind reeling. She tried to process the timeline. She had been on a bus to a shelter in Jersey on that 3rd day. She had been crying in a motel bathroom, looking at a positive pregnancy test, believing he was currently walking down the aisle with a woman in silk and diamonds. But Nia stammered. She said, the merger was a threat. Han cut in, his voice rising with frustrated intensity. A threat I was handling. I did not tell you because I wanted to protect you from the burden of it. I wanted to solve it before it ever touched you. I thought I was being strong. I thought I was being a husband. He reached out, his hand hovering over hers, trembling slightly. I spent 8 months looking for you. I hired every private investigator on the East Coast. I interrogated your friends. I went to your grandmother's grave. I thought you were dead. I thought my enemies had taken you. He looked at Arya, sleeping peacefully in Nia's arms, unaware that her existence was the center of a tragedy of errors. Every night, Han whispered, his voice cracking. Every night I walked into our empty apartment and poured a drink and stared at the city, wondering if I had failed you so badly that you preferred death to being with me. And all this time, you were just hiding. Hiding from a danger that did not exist anymore. The weight of his words crushed Nia. It did not exist. The poverty. The double shifts. The loneliness. The terror of every police siren. The way she had denied Arya a father and a safe home. It was not Han's fault. It was not the Mafia's fault. It was hers. It was her pride. Her refusal to wait for an explanation. Her assumption that he was exactly what the rumors said he was, a heartless criminal, instead of the men who had held her when she cried, the men who remembered how she took her coffee. I did not trust you, she whispered, the realization tasting like ash in her mouth. I claimed I loved you, but I did not trust you to handle it. No, Han said softly. You did not. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the brick wall of the adjacent building. The distance between them felt like an ocean. I have secured the perimeter, he said, his voice turning businesslike, cold again. A defense mechanism. My car is downstairs. We are taking you and Arya to the penthouse. The medical team is already setting up a nursery there. Kyung-soo. You do not have a choice, Nia, he said, not turning around. You proved you cannot protect her alone. Look where we are. Look at this place. He gestured vaguely at the peeling paint. I almost lost both of you tonight because you were too stubborn to ask for help. I would not let that happen again. So that's it? Nia asked, clutching Arya tighter. You retaking us prisoner? He turned then, and the look in his eyes was tragic. I am taking you home. You will have everything you need. You will never work again. You will be safe. But do not expect me to sleep in that bed with you. Do not expect us to be what we were. He walked back to the chair and picked up his jacket, sliding it on over his ruined shirt. He looked like a statue of a man, perfect and hollow. I see not trust you either, Nia, he said quietly. You ran. You hid my child. You let me grieve for 8 months while you were 20 miles away. How do I know you would not run again the moment things get difficult? Nia looked down at the ring finger of her left hand. It was bare. She had sold the diamond he gave her to pay for the first month's rent and prenatal vitamins. The irony was suffocating. She had sold his promise of forever to survive a hell of her own making. I'm sorry, she whispered. Sorry does not fix 8 months of hell, Han said. Get dressed. The nurse will help you. We leave in 10 minutes. He walked out of the room, leaving the door open. The security guards outside stepped into view, their backs to her, a wall of muscle and suits. Nia looked down at Arya. The baby shifted, letting out a small, soft sigh. He's right, she thought, tears dripping onto the pink blanket. I broke us. I broke him. But as she watched the door where he had vanished, a spark of something else ignited in her chest. It was not fear anymore. It was determination. He had fought a war for her. He had destroyed an empire for her in 3 days. And she had run. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. He thinks this is over, she thought. He thinks he can just shut me out and be the dutiful father and the cold ex-husband. He thinks I am the same scared girl who ran away. She was not. She was a mother now. She had survived the Bronx alone. She had faced the fear of death tonight and won. Nia pressed a kiss to Arya's forehead. We going to fix this, baby girl, she whispered. Daddy is stubborn, and he's hurt, and he's right to be angry. But he came. He came when I called. And that was the only thing that mattered. The penthouse was exactly as she remembered it, yet entirely different. The cold, modern minimalism was now disrupted by a state-of-the-art bassinet in the center of the living room, surrounded by piles of baby supplies that Han's assistants must have bought in a frantic sweep of every high-end boutique in Manhattan. It had been a week. 7 days of polite, suffocating silence. Han was a ghost. He was there, he held Arya for hours in the middle of the night, rocking her with a look of intense concentration, but he avoided Nia. He slept in the guest room. He spoke to her only about the baby's schedule or her medical needs. He was the perfect provider and the absent lover. Nia sat on the white leather sofa, watching him. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, Arya resting on his shoulder. He was murmuring something to her in Korean, a soft, rhythmic sound that made the baby coo. It was time. Nia stood up, wincing slightly as her stitches pulled, and walked toward him. He tensed as she approached but did not turn. Min Jun called, Nia said. Han stiffened. I told him not to bother you. He did not bother me. He told me congratulations. Nia stepped closer, until she was standing right beside him, looking out at the city lights that spread like a galaxy below them. He also told me you transferred the deed to the Lotus Club to him. And the shipping logistics. And the real estate holdings in Queens. Han shifted Arya to his other shoulder, turning his body slightly away from Nia. I'm restructuring. You re-stepping down, Nia corrected. He turned to look at her then, his face unreadable. I told you in the hospital. I almost lost you because of my world. So I am removing the world from the equation. Min Jun is better suited for the darker aspects of the business. I am keeping the legitimate investments. The tech firms. The clean money. Nia felt a lump form in her throat. You re-giving up the empire? The power? That's everything you worked for. It's not everything, Han said, looking down at the baby. I watched her turn blue, Nia. I felt what it was like to be powerless. No amount of territory or money could force air into her lungs. I do not want her to grow up wondering if her father is coming home or if he's in a trunk of a car. I do not want her to run away like her mother did because she's afraid of who I am. He looked up at Nia, and the raw vulnerability in his eyes took her breath away. I am changing everything for her, he said. And for you. Even if you do not want me anymore. Even if you stay here only for her sake. I will be a man you do not have to fear. Nia reached into the pocket of her cardigan. Her fingers closed around the small velvet box she had retrieved from the safe in the bedroom, the safe she still knew the combination to. I never feared you, Kyung-soo, she said softly. I feared losing myself. I feared being powerless. She held out the box. Han looked at it, then at her. He did not move to take it. I sold the ring you gave me, Nia admitted, her voice shaking. To pay for rent. To buy food. It was the hardest thing I ever did. She opened the box. Inside lay a simple platinum band. It was his. The wedding band she had left on the nightstand the night she ran. I see not buy back the diamond yet, she said. But I found this in the safe. You kept it. I kept everything, he murmured. I made a mistake, Nia said, stepping into his space, placing her hand on his chest, right over his heart. It was beating fast, a frantic rhythm against her palm. I let pride and fear dictate my life. I did not trust you with my fears, so I created a nightmare for both of us. But you. She looked up at him, tears blurring her vision. You tore down your world for me before I even asked. You fought a war for a woman who had already left you. I would burn the world for you, Nia. I told you that. I do not want you to burn the world, she whispered. I just want you to build a home. With me. No secrets. No running. If there is a threat, we face it. If there is a doubt, we speak it. She took the ring from the box and took his left hand. His fingers were large, calloused, trembling. I, Nia Washington, take you, Han Kyong-soo, to be my partner, she said, sliding the ring onto his finger. In chaos and in quiet. In poverty and in wealth. With all your scars and all your secrets, as long as you share them with me. Han stared at the ring on his finger. Then he looked at Nia, and the ice in his eyes finally, completely shattered. He let out a ragged breath and reached out with his free hand, cupping the back of her neck, pulling her forehead against his. You are dangerous, woman, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. More dangerous than any man I have ever faced. Is that a yes? She asked, smiling through her tears. It's a promise, he vowed. No more secrets. No more running. He leaned down and kissed her. It was not the hungry, desperate kiss of their past. It was slow, deep, and tasting of salt and redemption. It was a seal on a new contract, one written not in blood, but in hope. Between them, pressed against their chests, Arya let out a small, contented squeak. They broke apart, laughing breathlessly. Han looked down at his daughter, then at his wife. The shadows of the room seemed to retreat, pushed back by the warmth of the small, imperfect family standing in the center of the penthouse. Come, Han said, gently guiding Nia toward the bedroom, his arm a heavy, protective weight around her shoulders. Let us put our daughter to sleep. We have 8 months of lost time to make up for. Nia leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. The city lights glittered below, cold and indifferent, but inside, she was finally warm. She had played a dangerous game with a dangerous man, but looking at the ring on his finger and the baby in his arms, she knew the truth. She had not just survived the monster. She had loved him until he became a king. And this time, the queen was not going anywhere.